Hello everybody, I am just working on getting this up and running here. Obviously my webcam is not grabbing the picture it's supposed to be. Hello? Where are you? Yes, that's where you're supposed to be. We're going to deactivate. And there we go. Yay, I'm back. Woohoo! As you can tell, I've been doing some refinements. Still need to work on the lip sync here, but that's something I can work on later. So, we are over on YouTube today. A lot of reasons. Multiple reasons. But it's okay, we'll wait on that. So, if you haven't played this game yet, it is like the creepiest, cutest little thing known to mankind. I swear, I love Beacon Pines. It is like, if you remember Choose Your Own Adventure, yeah, Choose Your Own Adventure in game form, and it's kind of fun. So last time we left off, we had just gone through like a deep freeze, so we're going to jump back in here in a sec.
Unfathomable chill. Before they could react, it encased them in ice.
That is not what I wanted to do. Let's grab the whole dang thing, and we're going to get right down in the corner there. There we go.
Two boys, reunited by friendship, only to be cruelly separated by a malevolence beyond reason.
As I said, they just basically got frozen in the world's second ice age, and there's some weird shit going on in Beacon Pines.
And so, our story ends on this melancholy scene, in a silent treehouse turned statuary. In a town brought low by its secrets, sits a pair of friends, alone, together, for the rest of time. The end. No, that can't be the ending. It simply can't. I won't accept it, and I hope you won't either. There are more endings, more possibilities. I can feel it. We are just going to have to sort through them all until we find the one that fits.
Let's try this one.
Well, time to bust out the tickles. Beck lunged forward and began to tickle under Tish's arms. Tears began to form in Tish's eyes as she gasped for breath between gales of laughter. Beck redoubled her efforts until Tish finally had had enough. Iggy's eyes darted around, a realization dawning on his face that he was now outnumbered. Iggy kicked at the puddle before making his escape. Beck shook the ooze out of her hair as best as she could. Chapter 4. The Best Policy. Luca paused for a moment, catching his breath. He'd only just met Beck, and somehow he already managed to drag her into this mess. Hopefully he could make it up to her, but finding Rollo was his primary concern.
Okay, can't go that way, so... Can't go that way. Can we?
Roxy and Fitz looked drained. It was clear they'd spent all day searching. Roxy's temper could often be dismissed as the impatience of an older sibling. But this was the most intense Luca had ever seen her. Her eyes were wild and unfocused, looking straight through Luca. In a torrent of rambled words and tears, Luca broke down. Roxy, still exhausted and angry, softened briefly as her eyes hunted the ground in thought. With a determined sigh, she looked up at Luca. Roxy drew herself up. Roxy tried to think of the safest place to send Luca. Luca wiped his cheeks and gave a quick nod. Looking into the puddle, Roxy rubbed her arms to warm up. Mr. Nuncreed jumped with... Luca motioned to the phone booth. Mr. Nuncreed gently placed one of his substantial hands on Luca's shoulder. Luca peered up at Mr. Nuncreed. Kind eyes warmed a stern face. There was a deeper emotion hiding beneath it all. It was subtle, but Luca could sense something eating away at him. There was a shame lurking behind those eyes. A deep sadness. If Mr. Nuncreed was that worried about Rollo, maybe he could help. Mr. Nuncreed raised an eyebrow. Mr. Nuncreed's shoulders slumped. A deep sigh bellowed from his chest.
Why is this ominous? Why?
Luca attempted to take a step back, but Nuncreed's hand clamped down on his shoulder. With a firm shove, Nuncreed manhandled Luca into the phone booth. The door latched shut with a mechanical hiss. As Luca pounded the glass, the floor dropped from under his feet. The inside of the phone booth was now a loose capsule, plummeting at gravity's whim. Luca winced and pressed his hands to the walls. As he braced for impact, the capsule hurried to a surprisingly smooth stop. He felt a cold rush of air and opened his eyes with hesitance. Two large figures in hazmat suits occluded his view. Luca heard the deep, resigned voice of Mr. Nuncreed over an intercom. He knows too much. The end. Wait. No. This isn't the end. I know there's still much more. Somehow this went wrong. Okay, let's try something else. Luca drew himself up and decided to take the only option they had left. Flight. He squinted down the barrel of the mission control defense cannon, aiming it through an opening in the dense tree branches. He looked up with surprise as it struck true and taut. Luca and Iggy winced as they sprinted through the thicket. The branches clawed at them, reluctant to give passage. After what felt like a marathon, Luca stopped in his tracks as they reached the clearing. What the? That was all he was able to say before Iggy slammed into his back. The boys tumbled down a steep decline and crashed with a wheezing thud on a surface as hard as ice. In fact, it was ice. Chapter 5. Signs. They stood silently, catching their breath. The sky was like sapphire. With each breath, a plume of steam escaped from Luca's lungs. Let's keep moving. Luca pulled Iggy to his feet as they gazed across the snowy terrain.
Okay, this is creepy.
Luca had almost forgotten the walkie-talkie he was carrying. Luca looked at Iggy with hesitation. With a resigned sigh, Luca responded. Luca winced, shoving the walkie-talkie back into his pocket.
Okay, that's eerie.
The boys stared in disbelief at the sign that now clearly read, "Welcome to Beacon Pines." A disc of smooth metal was lightly covered in snow. Two faint seams were visible along the surface.
Whoa. Where are we?
The fencing listened, each chain link encapsulated with a translucent layer of ice. Looking down at the frozen stream, Luca could faintly see a school of minnows encased in the ice. The crunching of footsteps trailing Luca went hush. He looked back to see Iggy's face twisted with confusion. Luca peered upward at the darkening sky. He let out a long, foggy breath. Faintly, Iggy began to cry. Seeing Iggy in such a pathetic state gave Luca a sense of compassion, and more than a little guilt. Luca allowed himself to collapse next to Iggy. The boys huddled together for warmth and comfort. If not for exhaustion, their minds would be racing, trying to make sense of the events of the day. As it was, all they had energy for was to sit in silence, numb. Iggy motioned sarcastically to his half-deformed face. Iggy shrugged.
That's why most people are assholes.
Iggy now wept openly. He wiped his nose with a sleeve. Luca gave a warm chuckle. Iggy cleared his throat as he wiped his eyes. Iggy arched into a wide yawn. Luca's eyelids began to slowly drift shut. That's all Luca could whisper before succumbing to sleep. Iggy snuggled in some more. The house smelled of warm bread. Luca was playing with toy blocks on the living room rug. He looked up to see his parents on the couch. His mother held his father's head in her lap. A voice behind Luca spoke. "This is how you remember them, huh?" Luca turned to see his own face, the doppelganger from his dreams, still clad in a yellow hazmat suit, still carrying a look of disdain behind empty eyes. "Aww, look at this perfectly cozy scene. You know it wasn't really like this." The figure picked up a toy block and inspected it. "It's amazing the facades that one can build given the right materials. Not that I blame us. These are a child's memories, all warm and fuzzy. You don't remember, do you?" Lucas snatched the block from the figure's yellow-gloved hand. "Remember what?" The doppelganger pointed to the couch. "The last day we saw him alive. The day he chose to abandon us." Luca turned to look at his father, still lounging on the couch. "That's not true. He didn't abandon us." The doppelganger waved his hand dismissively. "Everything is true here. It's just a matter of what we choose to see. Let me show you." The world flickered and pulsed. Luca was sitting next to his bed, listening to his heartbeat with one of his dad's stethoscopes. The doppelganger limped into the room. Now, we both know that's not how this went." He grabbed Luca's hand and guided the stethoscope to the floor. Luca heard muffled shouting, brought close by the stethoscope. It was his parents, fighting. "Do you remember what we did next?" Luca gave a slow nod and crept down the hall to peek through the banister. He could see the outline of his mother at the bottom of the stairs. "Damn it, Walt. We can't afford to get involved in this." She was scared. His father stepped forward. "What am I supposed to do? Just watch? There's a sickness in this town, and we both know who's behind it. I swore an oath to help people. I won't turn my back on them." Luca's mother grabbed Walt. She was crying, pleading. "I can't lose you." Walt calmly removed Eleanor's hand from his shoulder. "What's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong. I could never live with myself if I let Sharper get away with this." Eleanor raised her voice. "Spare me your bullshit platitudes. What about our son?" Luca flinched, dropping the stethoscope down the stairs. Walt turned with a panicked smile. "Luca, is that you, buddy?" With tears in his eyes, Luca descended the stairs. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" Walt dropped to a knee to meet Luca eye to eye. "Nothing, buckaroo. Your mom and I just got a little overexcited is all." Luca placed the stethoscope against his father's chest. His heart was racing. "It sounded like you were going somewhere." Walt gently removed the device from Luca's ears. "Listen to me, Luca. I have some business to take care of. I'll be back in time to tuck you in." Luca hugged his father tightly. "Promise?" Walt stood up and walked to the door. He glanced over his shoulder. "I promise." With a wink and a grin, he put on his hat and strode out into the evening sun. A figure approached soundlessly from the foggy snowfall. It stood above them, lingering in contemplation. Slowly raising one hand above Iggy, it snapped out 2 brisk raps on his head. From a deep slumber, Iggy sprang up defensively. Whether it was the calming presence or the recognition that he was not in danger, Iggy felt his clenched fists lower. Luca looked up, gradually remembering his whereabouts. The figure exhaled a cloud of warm vapor. When it came to complete strangers, Iggy had trouble cobbling together an insult. Iggy huffed with gratification. Nat began to turn away indifferently. Iggy turned sharply and began to stomp off. Realizing he'd worn their patience then, Nat relented. Luca and Iggy turned around with hope in their eyes. Nat took a deep breath in. Nat exhaled slowly, then snapped his fingers. For a brief moment, Luca and Iggy let themselves believe that some great magic was about to unfold, until they opened their eyes and found themselves in the exact same place, cold and disheartened. Nat narrowed his eyes, furrowed his brow, and uttered. Luca began to laugh uncomfortably. He looked down at his feet. His eyes started back and forth in contemplation. With a sudden pain, a thought struck him. He sprinted off into the pale distance. As Iggy turned to follow, Nat called out. Chapter 6. The Source. Nat expressed his sympathy with a shrug and sauntered off as unassumingly as he'd arrived. He'd given Luca and Iggy what they needed, and nothing more. As Luca sprinted across the snow, the events of the past few days became clearer, pieces to a larger puzzle. Rollo said he was underground somewhere, captured. Mr. Kerr tried to cover it up with lies. The clipboards were hell-bent on capturing Iggy. It all seemed to point to perennial harvest. But right now, there was one thing that Luca needed to know. Luca stopped dead in his tracks. The tree was gone, uprooted and moved, leaving a raw gash in the earth. He dropped to his knees and dug wildly at the cold snow. His numb hands hit something hard, a headstone. A dry whisper escaped Luca's lips. There was no reply, just snow-covered silence. Iggy finally noticed the tears welling in Luca's eyes and the snow-covered grave. Suddenly, they heard the crunch of approaching footsteps in the snow.
This isn't good.
He bent down to scoop up a snowball and lobbed it playfully. Luca stuttered through heaving sobs. Iggy gave Luca a solid smack on the back of his head. Luca wiped his eyes with a sleeve. Iggy flashed a mischievous smile and cracked his knuckles.
Okay, can't go that way.
Iggy and Luca shared a skeptical look. Iggy darted behind a large pine and began digging furiously. He emerged holding a shoebox with a crude skull painted on its lid. Luca rolled his eyes with realization. Iggy stifled a chuckle. Iggy triumphantly raised the shoebox. Luca and Iggy inched up to the edge of the hole with bewilderment in their eyes. Arctic air breathed out of the cavern in heaving gusts. Mr. Kerr gazed down the abyss in contemplation. Kerr scratched the back of his head. His face contorted into a saccharine grin. Kerr snapped his fingers. Iggy turned to Luca with a sly glance. Iggy waved the box into the air, threatening to drop it down the hole. Iggy plucked a single bottle rocket from the box and held it up with reverence. After a long pause, Mr. Kerr flung up his hand with frustration. Mr. Kerr sighed into the frigid air. With a nonchalant flick, Iggy tossed the firework into the hole. With a growl, Kerr leapt at Iggy, crashing through Luca. Iggy tried to twist away, but in the struggle they both tumbled over the side. Luca dove forward, bracing Iggy's hand just before it slipped. His grip was made precarious by the cold, wet snow. He could see Kerr further down, clinging to Iggy's coat. Mr. Kerr gasped with insult. With a wild look in his eye, Mr. Kerr began to hum a proud melody. Luca's hand began to cramp. His voice began to crack. Luca felt Iggy loosen his grasp. Every muscle in Luca's body burned. Luca felt his hand slipping. A calm settled over Iggy's face. Iggy's voice was colder than the bitter air billowing from the chasm. Luca had no choice but to refuse Iggy's request. He tightened his grip and reached for the walkie-talkie in his pocket. A wild delight crept onto Mr. Kerr's face. "That's a good lad. Now, radio for help." Iggy begged Luca with his eyes one last time, but Luca pressed the button and called out, We need help. Mr. Kerr is in danger." It wasn't long before they were once again surrounded by clipboards. Mr. Kerr sighed with relieved frustration. There you are. You really are a worthless lot, aren't you? Mirror, now. A clipboard dutifully produced an ornate ivory hand mirror, and Mr. Kerr began preening his tousled hair. Ah, that's better. Mr. Van Horn, I applaud your sharp thinking under duress. I'll put in a good word for you with the founder. Take them away. A swarm of hands overpowered Luca. The last thing he saw before a cloth bag was pulled over his head was the defeated look on Iggy's face. The end. I think this was one of those times where doing the right thing was the wrong thing. Luca had no choice but to accept Iggy's request. With a quiet blink, Luca watched a teardrop sail down into the howling void. As his fingers slowly gave up, he met eyes with Iggy. The two silhouettes were swallowed by darkness.
Oh, look, it's Nat. I'm sorry, just made me laugh.
We have some idea what that would look like. A fierce twinkle flashed in Nat's eyes. With a chuckle, Nat turned and walked west. Dumbfounded, Luca followed behind him, trudging through the snow. Every step taking him further away from everyone and everything he knew, and closer to destiny.
Give me a sec here. Hello, computer.
To be continued in Beacon Pines, Pines Harder. Revenge served cold. Second time's a charm? Wait, that's it? This ends with a crummy cliffhanger just when it was getting good? I was even starting to like Iggy. No way. I refuse to be associated with some never-ending parade of sequels. Let's go back and find something more definitive. Luca began to respond, but the sky answered for him as the clouds above began to break, revealing patches of star-filled summer night. Moonlight filtered down, shimmering in the treetops. Luca stopped himself mid-sentence. Luca saw Beck skulking by the gate. Beck grabbed the wrought iron bars and shook the gate.
Ah.
Beck's voice was an excited whisper. The mysterious figure retracted their mask, hair pushing out from all corners. A chill ran down Luca's spine, his vision blurred. Beck stifled a sharp wince, and Luca looked down to see himself wrenching her hand. Gran tousled her hair back under the face mask. Gran gave Eris a curt nod and disappeared into the night. Chapter 5. What big ears you have! Lucas sat shivering in the bushes, staring at his feet. After checking to make sure the coast was clear, Beck gave him a gentle tug on his sweater. The clipboard finished writing with a scratchy flourish and looked up. Mr. Nuncreed, arms crossed over his paunch, gave an exhausted sigh. He snatched the pad and scribbled his name so hard the pen nearly snapped. The clipboards looked at each other for a moment, almost pondering the possibility, then broke into laughter as they walked away.
And there's where they moved everybody.
Rollo waggled his head with pride.
Oh, come on, Perry, you can hit that. Come on. Okay, fine, I'll go get another can. Okay.
Luca sucked in a long breath. Rollo let out a low whistle. Rollo and Luca shot back a look. Luca gazed out the window. Chapter 6. Secret Lair. Summer forged ahead, but the nights only seemed to grow colder. Luca walked home slowly under the pale starlight, cautious to avoid any more surprises lurking in the shadows. Reaching home, he slipped quietly into bed, half dreading what they might discover the next. Luca and Beck rolled their eyes as Rollo strutted across the room. Rollo flung open the cabinet with confidence. He coughed as a veil of dust hit his face. A look of realization crept onto Luca's face. All three kids snapped to glance at each other, then sprinted in turn toward the kitchen. Before he could finish, Luca scrambled up Rollo's back. The three crowded around the hutch to peer in. With the glass doors opened, a perfect porcelain display gleamed in front of them. Their eyes searched for anything amiss, but the only distinct feature was its impact. As Beck pulled on one of the teacups, it slanted forward with a hollow click. The entire hutch began to rustle and slide under its own power.
We're about to find out.
Luca jostled each cabinet drawer in turn. Only one was unlocked. He fingered through the filing cabinet, pausing at a bulging folder labeled Walter. For a long moment, he just stared at it. Luca nodded and caressed the label with his thumb. Rollo swiped the folder from the drawer and began leafing through the pages. He whistled to himself, barely looking at the text. He stopped at a page and mimed, holding up a monocle. Rollo looked up with heightened surprise. Rollo's finger traced across the page. Rollo scanned through several more pages. Luca, staring blankly at the cabinet this whole time, spoke softly. Rollo rustled the folder, trying to loose more pages. Luca frantically shoved the remaining cabinet folders, trying to find another labeled Walter. Luca slammed the drawer shut. A spider web of string connected photos of people from the town,
Murder wall!
interspersed with hastily scrawled notes. Rollo casually spun open a lid and dipped his finger in the jam. He smacked his lips. Rollo plunged his hand in the jar, fishing out a soggy slip of paper. Rollo offered the slimy note to Luca and licked his fingers clean. They crowded around a worn-down old map of Beacon Pines. Rollo carefully traced the path with his finger. He jabbed down at the end point. Luca looked up from the map. Beck flicked off the light, and they became statues in the dark. Overhead, creaking floorboards bent under slow, deliberate steps. The kids looked up, the tilt of their necks following each footfall. Then suddenly, it stopped. Without realizing, they'd been holding their breath. All three exhaled shakily and glanced at each other. A muffled male voice broke the silence.
Oh.
A final few footsteps reached the entrance above them, and the voice now echoed down the stairs.
Oh.
The three kids shuffled to the corners without a peep. As he began to descend the stairs, the man's voice punctuated every new step. Thump.
Oh.
Thump.
Oh.
Thump.
Oh.
Thump.
Oh.
Thump. At the bottom step, the man paused, squinting to search the room for signs of life.
Oh.
Rollo shifted suddenly. Luca gave him an intense, chastising look and whispered through clenched teeth. It was too late. Rollo was already inching toward the stairway. He screeched as he charged toward the shadowy figure. With all his weight, Rollo tackled the man to the ground. From the dark corner, they saw something move. Luca scrambled to the hunched figure on the ground. Pressing his fingers to the man's neck, he sighed with relief. As Beck flicked back on the light, Luca and Rollo both gasped in stereo.
Mr. Tolliver.
Chapter 7. The Interrogation of Hiram Tolliver. Still unconscious, Mr. Tolliver slumped heavily in a shoddy old chair.
And hello. Good to see you in there, and I had to set it so, we don't get the usual trolls.
His hands were bound with rope, his feet tied with some loose string. The kids huddled in a circle, discussing their plan. One thing was certain, they couldn't just let Mr. Tolliver go. They needed to know what he was doing in Luca's house. After some deliberation, it was decided. They'd run the classic good cop, hard cop interrogation. Rollo brandished a steely gaze. I've got this. Read about it 100 times. Rollo swaggered past the chair which propped up the slumping Hiram Tolliver. Without even looking at his captive, he began with a long, blustery drawl. Mr. Tolliver remained motionless. Rollo spun around to face him. He'd clearly expected to rouse Mr. Tolliver with his booming voice. Beck and Luca gave each other an unsure glance. Rollo slammed his fist on the table. He grabbed the table lamp and beamed it onto the unconscious face. Mr. Tolliver groaned and slowly lifted his head. He recoiled with a muddled, weary squint. The chair wobbled as he attempted to straighten up. Mr. Tolliver could only make out rough shapes through the glaring light. With a gruff tone, Rollo hoped to both conceal his voice and intimidate. The doubtful expression on Beck and Luca's faces transformed into awe. Rollo, hitting his stride, was now channeling every detective trope his memory could recall. He slammed the table again. Mr. Tolliver's voice became desperate. He was nearly in tears. Mr. Tolliver was in a daze, now more confused than ever. He shook his head, feeling more and more dizzy. His voice faded to a whisper. With that, Mr. Tolliver passed out cold. Rollo swung around with a repentant grimace. Chapter 8. 6 feet under, 3 towns over. The kids spent the rest of the afternoon combing through dusty piles of old county records, desperately searching for anything that could help them make sense of Mr. Tolliver's cryptic utterance. Luca tried to shake the thought of Gran's basement, but his focus wavered. Explosives, messages hidden in jam, dossiers on various town figures, and a corkboard threaded with photos.
Murder board. Murder board.
Gran was the only family he had left. He still couldn't bring himself to believe the worst. But the old map with the symbol of explosives in town square made that difficult. As the sun began to set, the kids were no closer to the truth. Rollo shut his book with an assertive nod. Rollo muttered under his breath. Beck slammed her finger down on the open page. Something tickled the back of Luca's mind. The question hung in the air. Beck rubbed her eyes. Luca's heart was pounding as he approached the house. If he was lucky, Gran, or whoever it was, hadn't gotten back. And of course, there was Mr. Tolliver tied up and unconscious in the basement. Dealing with him would be the first order of business. Luca shook out his arms to calm his nerves before entering. He held perfectly still, tempering his breath, and listened closely. She was asleep. His only hope was that she hadn't found Mr. Tolliver before dozing off. Mr. Tolliver was nowhere to be seen. Or maybe Gran knew everything. Luca's hungry stomach groaned. Not realizing it, he'd gone the entire day without eating. Luca rushed over to the pile of jam jars, unscrewed one, and shoveled a handful into his mouth. He flipped the lid to read the label.
Oops. Uh-oh.
As Luca climbed the final stair, the emotion of the day dragged heavily. With each consecutive step, his legs weakened. His stride began to falter. He tried to grab for the railing to steady himself. Something was wrong. Luca groaned and tried to move. His limbs might as well have been bolted to the ground.
Oh, it is. It's adorable.
Through numb
And creepy,
ears,
but
he
it's
mumbled
adorable.
just before falling asleep.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will be right back. We're going to see what the heck happens here for just a moment, and it should keep... Okay, good. So I'll be right back. Give me about 5 minutes.
Chapter 9.
And we should be back here in a moment. I know I am back. Where's my remote? There we go. Chapter 9.
A speech to end all speeches.
And actually, before I get too far into it,
Luca awoke to find himself face down in bed. He moaned into his pillow. Why would Gran drug him?
because you ate somebody else's jam, dumbass.
Or rather, why was she trying to drug Mr. Nuncreed? Shaking the questions from his woozy head, Luca snapped back to the matter at hand.
Okay, so we gotta go to the festival. Okay, festival. He's not in danger, he's cooperating with them, but you don't know that because it's an alternate timeline.
Augustus Valentine nervously wiped his brow.
It's the way it always happens.
Gus cleared his throat and awkwardly loosened his tie. William Kerr bounded on the stage with the energy of a preacher at a big tent revival. He gave Gus a hearty slap on the back and motioned him off the stage. Mr. Kerr pulled a thick stack of note cards out from his vest. Mr. Kerr took a moment to survey the crowd. He wiped away a single tear. He thumped the podium to emphasize each word. Mr. Kerr nodded confidently, biting his lip. The crowd was silent, in rapt attention. Mr. Kerr methodically made eye contact with each section of the crowd. His voice began to build to a crescendo.
That's creepy.
The crowd began to look around nervously. Mr. Kerr quickly flicked through his note cards. He raised his hands up to the heavens.
And we're frozen again. The hell?
At that moment, a merciless wall of impossibly cold air ripped through the crowd, instantly freezing everyone and everything it touched. For a man like William Kerr, this was a fitting way for things to end. On a stage, with an entire town frozen in rapt attention for the rest of time. The end. There's that ice again! Whenever I think we're getting close, it comes along and ruins everything! Maybe we should just quit? Maybe you should just close the book, walk away, and never think of me again. No, I don't mean that. We got a little closer this time. We just need to try again. Please.
I'm just looking through to see which ones. Back to interrogation.
They'd run the classic good cop, sly cop interrogation. Luca and Rollo ducked behind a barrel, leaving Beck to her task. With a few crisp snaps, she roused Mr. Tolliver. Mr. Tolliver looked down and shifted a bit, testing his restraints. Beck caught herself before letting the surprise manifest on her face. She'd already gotten him to reveal his relation to Gran. This was going to be easy. Mr. Tolliver wriggled a bit in his restraints. Beck quickly removed the ropes. Mr. Tolliver rubbed the growing knot on his forehead. Beck twirled her hand, as if to prompt Mr. Tolliver to finish her thought. Beck shook her head and clicked her tongue. Mr. Tolliver let out an amused huff in agreement. Beck was on a roll now, playing Mr. Tolliver like a fiddle. Heading for the stairs, Mr. Tolliver hesitated and turned to Beck with a puzzled look. She grinned and gave him a peppy wave. With a shrug, he continued up the stairs, whistling a jaunty tune. Beck blinked slowly in disappointment. She turned to the table and began tearing small scraps of paper. Beck marked each scrap of paper and leaned back. Luca and Beck looked at Rollo with amazement. The road leading to Beacon Pines was long and a sort of natural barrier for the impatient.
Uh-oh.
Gus looked around nervously. Eris's cry hung in the air. Solomon stood proudly at the entrance to the drugstore, holding a brown bag overflowing with black licorice. Solomon shoveled a surprising amount of licorice into his mouth. Beck cupped her hands on the glass to peek inside. Beck flung open the door and they all squeezed in. Luca cracked his knuckles and entered the letters into the keypad. The inside of the phone booth dropped loose from its shell. Without even the space to panic, they closed their eyes, held their breath, and accepted. Suddenly, the chaotic descent slowed to an effortless landing. It was unclear where they ended up, but at least it was solid ground. The air was stagnant and smelled vaguely of chlorine. Rollo's hands hovered over the field of blinking buttons. Joseph waited for a moment in silence. He gestured toward the strange tubes. Nuncreed let out a growl of a sigh. He shook his head wistfully. Nuncreed took a menacing step towards the children. Luca began to laugh. The color drained from Nuncreed's face. Nuncreed grabbed Luca by the shoulders. His eyes were frantic. A jolt of realization struck Mr. Nuncreed.
Interesting.
Chapter 8. The Cold, Hard Truth. Beck leapt up, allowing the suction to yank her into the dark. Dimness eclipsed around her like the shutter of a camera as she seemed to cover great distance in mere moments. Her only points of reference were glints of upcoming turns, which approached with frightening speed, only to carom her gracefully along. She heard the tinny, distant echoes of Rollo's glee. Once she stopped fighting against it, the ride was impossibly smooth. Then, all of a sudden, as if minutes had passed in an instant, light blazed into view. A burst of wintry air snuffed across her face, and she was flung out into the cold. As they rounded the corner to the frozen town square, they spotted Mr. Nuncreed inching cautiously toward a pit at its center. He held his arms out gingerly, as if approaching a beast in the wild. Upon closing the distance, Luca recognized what Nuncreed was after. Gran stood confidently at the edge, one arm outstretched over the abyss. Nearby, a wheelbarrow had been emptied out. She held a lit torch, which flickered in the bitter wind. Mr. Nuncreed turned back toward the kids, desperation in his eyes. Rollo and Beck held steadfast in awe. Luca approached closer. Mr. Nuncreed spun back toward Gran, his voice growing louder. Mr. Nuncreed winced with anguish. His voice hardened. They both now yelled, not to each other, but at fate itself, making their peace with long-held burdens. The wind howled with encouragement. They menaced at each other, both catching their breath. The moment balanced. Amid a blur of emotions and memories, Luca's mind flooded with questions. The wind calmed, as if to give him the stage. And in the stillness, he began to hum. After the death of his father, Luca had trouble sleeping. Each night, his mother would sit at the foot of his bed and hum a gentle melody. It was the only thing that could calm his mind. The only thing that, however briefly, could make it all seem okay. That melody pervaded every memory Luca had of his mother. Shivering in the raw snow, he began to hum it out loud. Gran lowered the torch, listening closely as recognition slowly set in. Her heart sank. Those countless nights of consolation, the incomparable loss they shared together. She let the torch fall to the snow and sizzle out. A few steps toward Luca was all she could bear before dropping to the snow herself. Through a flood of tears, she began to hum along, note for note. Luca lifted his head in astonishment. The last time he heard that melody was the last night he saw his mother. Luca blinked through blurry, watery eyes, trying to see more clearly. He could just make out the impression of a familiar face. He peered across the snowscape at the woman on her knees. Something about her was undeniably his mother, only smaller, older.
She fell into that green crap.
Luca sprinted as fast as he could toward his mother. They held each other close, and the cold retreated from their bodies. Eleanor looked down at Luca, tightening her embrace in an appeal for forgiveness. Joseph slumped into the cold, wet snow. For the first time in a long time, her voice felt like her own again. Luca gazed down at Nuncreed with pity. He looked small. Joseph stared into the snow as if searching it for answers. Chapter 9.
Okay, and as it's 3:30, we're gonna call it a day today. And it's Friday. I think. Yeah, it's Friday. So I'll be back on Monday. Probably going to be doing a lot more on YouTube than on Twitch right now. Just until they get their shit together. If they get their shit together. I really don't care. As both Cabby and I have said, community can be rebuilt other places. So I will be back on Monday. Have a great weekend. And if you're in the path of that wonderful, wonderful tropical storm, please stay safe. And I'll see you guys on Monday.